First of all, I'm really excited to be here to talk about advanced therapies, which very nicely follows the talk by Krishnan. I am going to talk about what you can call the new frontier of biomedical science, and that is mainly cell therapy, but also make a few references to gene therapy. And by cell therapy, I don't mean autologous, meaning cells isolated from the patients themselves, but actually cells that we produce from what we call pluripotent stem cells. But I'm going to take you through that. So just a few seconds on where I'm coming from. I'm coming from Novo Nordisk, and basically at a glance, we have products in almost 170 countries. We supply our medicines to more than 32,000 individuals. We have 45,000 employees. We are heavily, just like Novartis, heavily science-based companies with R&D centers basically around the world in China, Denmark, India, US, and UK. And what we focus on is, of course, first and foremost diabetes. That is how our founding fathers started the company. And then we have moved later on into other serious chronic diseases, and that is what we're going to discuss today. How can stem cells potentially provide curative treatment for serious chronic diseases, which is a new area that Novo Nordisk has entered into. But before I go there, I just want to give you a little bit, set it in a frame. So basically, what maybe we accept of antibiotics and potentially also some oncology treatments have been able to do today is treatment of symptoms. You have a headache, you get an aspirin. You have diabetes, you get insulin. But to normalize disease impact, we are just moving in that direction. For curative treatments, there are not that many, and there are actually a lot of diseases that need curative treatments, not just treatment of symptoms. Some of the diseases could be type 1 diabetes, where you are basically sick all the time. You cannot take a moment where you say, today I'm not going to take my pill, because then you're blood glucose is going to deteriorate and you're going to be really sick. If we look at cell and gene therapies, as I think Krishnan also spoke a little bit to, some of these treatments are single treatments, meaning that the patients are only treated once and then the patients have a curative treatment. And that means that we also need not only to work with the innovation in science, but also to work with innovation in the commercial side, because the cost will of course be high in the beginning, but if you integrate over the overall cost area, we believe that cell-based and gene therapies potentially could be cheaper for society, and they are also going to provide a significantly better quality of life. FDA expect that there will be 10 cell and gene therapies approved, between 10 and 20 cell and gene therapies approved by 2025. So a huge explosion. And for comparison, I think today there are 100 different monoclonal antibodies approved. So this is really the next frontier in biomedical science. Now, if you look a little bit about what is actually a stem cell, which is what we're going to focus the rest of the talk on, it's basically a living drug, as you can see here. And that, of course, makes the requirement significantly different. Krishnan spoke about 5 different categories. I've made it a little bit more simple here, only speaking about 3 different categories. And making a small molecule, that is basically a tablet, like an aspirin. That's like assembling a bike. A lot of people can do it. You can go to a contract research manufacturer and have it made basically all over the world. Making a protein, the bar goes a little bit up, and the complexity in making proteins is probably like making an aeroplane compared to small molecules. But making a living drug, as Krishnan also spoke a little bit to, cell therapy, whether it's autologous cells or cells deriving from pluripotent stem cell, is basically like making a space station, because you need so much control of the cells before you inject them. And a cell can express tens of thousands of different proteins. You don't need to characterize all of them, but you need to be goddamn sure that the cell is the same every time you produce it. So that was just to set a little bit into perspective how difficult it can be to use cell therapy that Krishnan also spoke to. So what can you actually use stem cells for? Well, stem cells has unique properties. not to be confused with cellular therapies that Christians talk about, because stem cells can basically self-renew and differentiate into more specialized cells. They are pluripotent, meaning that they can become any of the 200 cells that comprises the human body. And then they are incredibly valuable because many of the diseases that we suffer from as human beings are either damaged cells, dysfunctional cells, or lost cells. Parkinson's disease, you have lost your dopaminergic neurons. Type 1 diabetes, you have lost your insulin-producing beta cell. Dry AMD, or age-related blindness, you have lost something called your RPE cells. And all of this we can replace by making stem cells. And they can be made either from pluripotent stem cells, which is basically a blastocyst or fertilized egg, or induced pluripotent stem cells, which is you're taking, for example, a skin biopsy, and then you reprogram the cells to become pluripotent. And those are the two forms of pluripotent stem cells that are being used today. If we look a little bit at the value chain, you start with a pluripotent stem cell, either being an induced pluripotent stem cells or an embryonic stem cell, and then you make a cell line out of that. Then you make a bank with these cells that you then can take a vial out and differentiate into cardiomyocytes, to insulin-producing beta cells, to astrocytes, maybe to interneurons. If you've broken your spinal cord, you can also make cells that can fix that. Then you need to manufacture, and you most often also need a complicated delivery device depending on the disease. Then you need to do clinical trials and discuss with authorities how should the clinical trial be, how long should it be, how big should it be, and then eventually you need to commercialize. And commercialization, as I mentioned, you need just as much innovation, because often you will only pay for one treatment and then it will to some degree be fixed the disease that you have. And that also calls for new innovative models in terms of payment models. So if I speak a little bit about what we are doing at Novo Nordisk, we have 4 main projects that are soon to go into the clinic within the next few years. Parkinson's disease, where we are making dopaminergic neuron. Chronic heart failure, where we are making cardiomyocytes, so basically making the cells that are lost during a heart attack. Dry age-related macular degeneration, which is also called age-related blindness. We are making the cells that are lost, they're called RPE cells that we inject into the eye. And type 1 diabetes that we have worked on for decades, we are making the insulin-producing beta cells that are killed by the autoimmune attack that causes type 1 diabetes. What I also want to mention here is that all the projects you see on this slide, none of them are done exclusively by Novo Nordisk. Everything is partnered up. For Parkinson's disease, we have 3 or 4 external collaborators, and it's the same for basically all, at least the mature projects that you see on the left. For the early projects, we have typically either biotech or academic partners, being stroke, also some ophthalmology indications, kidney disease. We can actually now make small mini kidneys we can grow in a test tube that can filter urine. So not only a single cell, but a whole small mini organs. So this is some of the diseases that we think we will be capable of addressing with stem cells, together with our many partners. And I think we have more than 20 partners securing that we can move this project portfolio forward. It makes it a lot of fun to work at a place like Novo Nordisk, because you get both to do the industry part, be engaged with either early biotech, which is vibrant, coming up with a lot of new ideas, and the same with academia. Of course, it's also getting all these partners to work together, and timelines, I can tell you, sometimes can be challenging, but it is extremely exciting. And what I think brings all of this together for the people at least working at Novo Nordisk, but also elsewhere, is a huge passion. So if you were to select one thing that should drive your career, a little bit like Krishnan also spoke to, it is passion. If you don't feel passionate about what you are doing, at least you should not knock on our door. You need to be passionate, you need to be motivated, and we have one focus, and that is the patients that suffers from these serious chronic diseases. Then we, along the way, can also make money, and we can do a lot of other things, but it's passion and the patients that come in focus when we select the future employees. And if you have that, you will have a fantastic scientific career, I'm pretty sure. I just want to leave you with one last movie. And before I go to the next slide, I basically just want to say a little bit. This is a patient who have lost all their, she has lost all her dopaminergic neurons. So she suffers from a Parkinson's disease. And basically, she has been treated with not embryonic stem cells, but stem cells derived from a fetus, so midbrain dopaminergic neuron derived from a fetus. That is, of course, not something that a company like Novo Nordisk can do for ethical reasons, and I'm pretty sure that Henrik Jørgensen, you will agree with that using fetuses as a factory is not the best thing. But what we have shown is that we can take pluripotent stem cells and make exactly the same cells. But I just want to leave you with what a fantastic impact these therapies can have. And I think you probably all know somebody who has suffered from Parkinson's disease, because 1% of the population actually does. So the next slide you can see on the left, this is before treatment, and it's not a still picture. This is basically how much the woman who got the treatment can move. And you can see how slowly she is moving. And then it's over a year after, and you can see what a remarkable impact stem cell therapy can have on patients suffering from a serious chronic disease like loss of their dopaminergic neurons. So ladies and gentlemen, this is what the future is going to bring. We will most likely be able to provide curative approaches for diseases where there are very little or poor treatments today. So that was basically what I wanted to say, and thank you so much for your attention.